You got a slightly different room that I'm filming in today. Welcome everyone to the boxing gossip bedroom, as they say on Cribs. This is where the magic actually happens. Basically, Mrs. Gossip has let the bank holiday get to her head. She's on a big sort of cleaning day. The laundry is running, the tumble dryer is running, and it sounds like Piccadilly Circus in the usual room. So I've had to kind of hide away and lock myself up to kind of escape it. Anyway, I'm going to do an alternative review of Mayweather vs Berto All Access. I'm going to do an alternative review for two real reasons. Firstly, because we've talked about a lot of All Accesses over the months and years on my channel, and I got a limited interest in discussing Floyd Mayweather's training, discussing Floyd Mayweather's preparation. I've also got somewhat limited interest in Andre Berto's preparation, because let's face it, he doesn't realistically have a chance of winning, so what he's doing is, to be blunt, largely irrelevant, and I know that is blunt, but that's just the way I feel. So I'm going to concentrate on another element of All Access. For those who haven't yet watched it, I recommend that you do. It's about 14 minutes in, and it's about a 2-minute segment. Now, as boxing fans, we'll have all had hypothetical discussions with our mates about the following subject over the course of the year. And one thing I wanted to talk about is, on some of my recent videos about my personal trainer mate taking up boxing, I've got some positive feedback, which I'm very grateful for. People have said, they prefer those kind of videos, not just pure hardcore boxing, but they like to hear a bit of story, they like to hear a bit of comedy, etc. So let me tell you about one mate of mine. He's quite a good mate of mine, and I'll paint a picture. I'm 6'4". This guy is taller than me, so he's a big guy. He is very heavy. He's got one of those bills. He's in his mid-20s. He's got one of those bills where he is carrying quite a bit of fat, but because he is so tall and still quite young and relatively athletic, he's kind of just about getting away with it. So I'd say he's something like 6'4", 16, 17 stone. Drinks a lot of beer, eats a lot of McDonald's, goes to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and he's kind of got like a rugby player physique. Now, this guy and I had a hypothetical discussion numerous times, and it's one that comes up often when we're in the pub and we've had 5 pints. Who would win in a fight between him and Amir Khan? And it comes up time and time again, and he's convinced that in a fight with Amir Khan, he would quite simply be too big, too strong, too powerful, he'd hit too hard, he'd have too much punch resistance for a smaller guy like Amir Khan to deal with. Now, for what it's worth, I've been disagreeing with him. I've been saying that, he may think he's a big guy, a big, tough, strong guy, but if Amir Khan hit him, he wouldn't have felt anything like it. If someone who isn't a professional fighter to get hit by a guy like Amir Khan, it's going to be lights out. Having said that, I'm also a realist, and despite the fact that my mate is no pro fighter, he's relatively handy. He's got amateur experience, he's a big lump, he's very athletic, and I guess if he landed on a guy like Amir Khan, and I'm not talking about Khan's chin here, I'm talking about, if a 16 stone, 17 stone bloke lands on a 10 stone bloke, there's always a chance he could get a knockout. And secondly, I guess in a street fight type environment, he could probably wrestle Amir Khan or overpower him in that sense. Physically he'd be so much heavier and stronger. Anyway, I was reminded very much of those hour-long pub conversations about who'd win between this guy and Amir Khan when I was watching the Mayweather Berto All Access. Because what happens is one of Mayweather's bodyguards, a real heavily muscled bloke, decides to get in the ring and decides to do some sparring. Big gloves, head guard, proper sparring rules. Now, this is the only bit of All Access I'm going to talk about in this video, because for me, this was the bit that majorly caught my attention. So Floyd says he's going to search the gym for somebody who, is a bit green, not too experienced to make it fair. And he picks this guy out to fight his bodyguard. And his bodyguard is the typical, bodyguard type. I'm not going to say steroid user because I don't know the guy. But we're talking a guy here who must be 40 years old. You know, biceps out to here, shoulders out here. Yeah, it's absolutely, you know, massive unit. I'm guessing he would be 18, 19 stone. Obviously, gyms every day like a beast. You know, that sort of character. You all know what I'm talking about. That kind of Mayweather bodyguard. And he gets put in the ring with a guy who I have read is not even a professional boxer. He's some sort of regarded amateur boxer. Now, looking at the guy, he looked very small. It's hard to get a perspective of what kind of weight class this guy would be, because he looks so tiny next to this absolute monster of a bodyguard. So, yeah, maybe that flattered him, but I'm guessing he would be, let's say, a welterweight, or a light welterweight, or a lightweight. You know, that sort of bracket. He looked like a very small guy to me. Anyway, the sparring session goes on for 5, 6, 7 seconds. Bodyguard takes sort of very slow, lumbering, telegraphed, you know, aggressive hook. And this little kid, this amateur kid, just steps back, covers up, takes a little dip, counters him, and just drops him like horribly. And this bodyguard, and he must have an absolute minimum of like 6, 7 stone weight advantage on this kid. This bodyguard just goes straight over backwards like a tree that's been chopped down. Like, he's gone. You know, he gets up. Obviously, the weight advantage means that even though he gets dropped horrifically, it's not like a knockout punch, but his nose is busted. He's covered in blood. The guy who's refereeing is like telling Floyd, call it off, call it off. And he gets horribly, horribly, horribly dropped, you know, by this amateur kid. And I'm thinking, and this bodyguard, right, he's someone, yeah, he was saying at the start, like, he's got some sort of heavy MMA background, and he used to train in MMA and all of this stuff. What I'm getting at here is, if everyone's got a mate who's 16, 17 stone, everyone's got a mate who's 16, 17 stone and sporty, you know, plays a bit of rugby, done a bit of MMA training, you know, like, thinks he's a tough nut. But for me, what this clip highlighted, and it's not that I didn't already know this, but it's just an interesting reminder and reminded me of my mate. It's like, what boxing is all about is subtleties in the ring. It's not about who can hit harder. I'm sure this 18, 19 stone bodyguard could kill a man if you stood there with your chin up in the air and let him right hook you across the face. I'm sure he'd punch a lot harder than this little amateur kid who knocked him over. But what it's about is not simply who can land the biggest punch. You know, it's not like some 18 stone guy spills out of a pub and can suddenly knock out Floyd Mayweather. It's about landing those punches. And landing the punches is about accuracy, timing, precision, speed, you know. And the difference between these two fighters wasn't just the knockdown, it was how openly telegraphed the bodyguard's hook was compared to how snappy and how well timed the amateur's hook was. Yeah, this amateur planted it to perfection. He couldn't have landed a sweeter punch, and it was because he was just waiting. He had a look at this guy for 1 second, timed it, and then waited, kind of dipped in and just took him out. You know, it was really interesting to see. And for me, it kind of, I know it's a silly pub conversation to have anyway, but it kind of reminded me of you know, my big mate who's always said that he'd fancy a sort of Amir Khan, and made me think that fight wouldn't go too well for him if it was ever to happen. You know, Mayweather Berto, for me, it's not an entertaining fight. It's not an intriguing fight. Berto's training looked good. But let's be honest, it doesn't really matter how good his training is. He just doesn't have the skill to beat Floyd Mayweather. You know, the gap between the two is so vast that it doesn't matter for me what kind of shape Floyd Mayweather turns up in, what kind of shape Andre Berto turns up in. The gulf is just there. So whilst I'm going to buy into the build-up, whilst I'm going to watch the All Access, you know, I am a hardcore fan. For me, it's little funny moments like this that actually make it more interesting. And what Floyd said, I'll just go back to the little bodyguard situation for 1 minute. What Floyd said is, this guy is a great street fighter, but he can't box. You know, because in the street, if you're some 18, 19 stone bloke who can just push blokes over, who can just wrestle with guys, overwhelm them, throw them down, hold them down, that's all well and good, that's all relevant. But when you're talking boxing, when you're talking time speed, you're talking hand speed, you're talking accuracy, you're talking footwork, you're talking all these little subtleties. And for me, that's the difference between a great boxer and a street fighter. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I hope you watched the clip. If you've enjoyed this, give me the thumbs up. Appreciate it.